I'd like to start with a little bit of Dhamma. It seems to be a bit more appropriate than starting with the scenario that we are being bombarded with 24 hours a day around the world. So my thoughts currently are that we as Buddhists have come with faith into the sasana of the Lord Buddha, and the sasana is about the heart. The Buddha's religion, the Buddha's Dhamma, is about the heart, developing the heart. And I think in these challenging times, to remember that is very crucial, very important. Because the heart is a very beautiful thing once it has been developed in the way that the Lord Buddha has taught us. And the heart has a lot of power, it has a lot of energy. It's a very beautiful, radiant thing. And it is that which can enable us to maintain our humanity at times where, for want of a better word, the world seems to be dehumanized in many ways. And I'm not only talking about the fact that we are now all running around with a piece of cloth over our mouths, but also in many other ways. And so remembering that the heart is the crucial central part of the Buddha's teaching, and that is the one thing that we need to develop. Ajahn Metiko is just knocking on the window, and I just show you quickly if my thing, just to see, so you see what it looks like outside. Can you see it?
Hello, Ajahn Metiko.
It's snowing. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Wow. What's the temperature right now, Ajahn?
So Merry Christmas to you all. Okay, I'm getting back into shape here. Yeah, I just thought it might be interesting because in Singapore, I'm sure you don't get to see much snow. So as I was saying, remember that, developing the heart is the crucial thing. And one of the things that we develop in the heart are these qualities of, goodwill, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And those can be our lifesavers in these times, because a lot of people, they look around and they see a lot of strange things, to say the least, happen, or very bad things. And they see other people not playing by the rules. They see the world kind of deteriorating in a way that can be quite frightening. And so we may easily be tempted to give in to those things that the Buddha called the four wrong causes of action, which is giving way to greed, hatred, delusion, and also fear. Now, those four, the Buddha says, are the four wrong causes of action. So with mindfulness and wisdom, we should always be watching over our heart, guarding our hearts, and checking whether we are about to act out of greed, whether we are about to act out of anger or aversion, whether we are about to act out of delusion, which is of course very difficult, because delusion by default means that we don't know that we are deluded. But as Buddhists with the faith in the Buddha, we should know that delusion is always part of our decision making. And so not always trusting our first impulses. And lastly, whether we are giving way to actions based in fear. I know there's a lot of fear around. I can see it in my own family. I can see it among my friends. I can see it among the people that come to our monastery. And that fear is giving rise to unskillful, unwholesome actions. So even though we living in a world, I don't know whether it's still called the age of information, but as you all know, with information, the problem is that because there's so much disinformation, misinformation, false information, that sometimes we feel we have a hard time finding out what is really true and what is false. And so one of the things I just like to remind you all that we can always trust in is that the Buddha was always right. So if we can rely on the Dhamma of the Buddha, if we can rely on the importance of maintaining our humanity in our hearts, then I feel that as Buddhists we can set a good example in these challenging times. And by not giving way to greed, hatred, and delusion, trusting in the Buddha, that we can base our actions in Dhamma. So that's something that I always tell people here. When people do come to the monastery, I try my best to remain or retain, rather, that status of a samana, which is supposed to be a peaceful one. So I'm trying to maintain that peace, encourage people to maintain peace in their own hearts. And it can be very challenging because invariably, and the very fact that you opened this Dhamma talk with the question is that this discussion will always somehow, whether we like it or not, end up with the dilemma that is plaguing the world at the moment. And what I've seen in my family, among good friends of mine, among Buddhists in our community, and even between monks recently, is that there is a very great, what we might call polarization. And that is exactly that divisiveness, that dividing is something that is as old as history. If you all remember, it's almost like a proverb: divide and conquer. If you can divide people, then you can conquer. That's how wars have been fought in ancient times, and that is how wars are being fought today. So do not allow yourselves to be divided. Stand as one people, as one humanity. We all have a heart that can be developed. And if we can develop the goodness and share that goodness and spread that goodness around and not give in to provocations or the attempts to divide us as a people, then I think we are following in the footsteps of the Buddha. And I think that's the most important thing. So find yourselves looking for time to be able to come to understand your own heart. In other words, find the time to meditate, find the time to make yourselves peaceful, so that when you go out in the world, you can take that peace with you and share it with other people. So I thought these would just be some encouraging, hopefully, words. And maybe based on that, we can start a discussion. And you can ask whatever you like. And I will try my best to maintain it within the realm of Dhamma. So please, if anybody has any questions, ideas on what to talk about, now is the time.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sorry, Ajahn, we had an audio issue. So we have some people that have raised their hands already. Brother Chan. Brother Chan. Oh, no.
Yes, thank you, Bante. I just have a very simple question on meditation. Okay. during samatha meditation, if the boundaries of your body disappeared and be one with the space, is that a good thing? And what do you do? What do you do then with that kind of state that you are in?
I think it's a very good thing. It's just a sign that the mind is really experiencing some peace and calm. Because the body, you see, the body is something that we experience through perception, and perceptions can change. And especially if we get into meditation, which is essentially a playing with perception, that these perceptions can change. The important thing is to remember that whatever we do perceive is not so important, because we are always bringing it back into the mind, bringing it back into the heart, and maintaining mindfulness and awareness in the heart. So experiencing the state where...
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress. Okay, somebody's recording it. Okay, fair enough. Yes, so if you're experiencing the fact that the boundaries of the body disappear, and there is more of a feeling of oneness with your surroundings, then I would just say enjoy it, because it means that the body is light, it's buoyant, and it's no longer something that demands your attention. A lot of us have trouble when we meditate if the body is still persistently aching and having all sorts of feelings, that we get distracted by those feelings. But if the body kind of becomes light and buoyant, and the perception of the body changes to where it becomes one with its surroundings, then it's a good sign. And I would recommend that you just enjoy it, but just maintaining mindfulness and wisdom with it, seeing it as a conditioned phenomena that has arisen due to causes, and it will take its course, and it will change, and then it will pass away. And that's okay. So not holding on to it as something wonderful or something very special. It's just that.
Is that a hindrance too? Can it be a hindrance?
I don't think it's a hindrance unless you make it one. See, making it a hindrance would be to interpret it in ways that, and trying to make sense of it is not so important, because you can't really, because it's just a perception. If it tells you something, if you gain insight through it, perhaps in the fact that the mind and the body are two different things, or that the perception can change, you can gain insight into perception. All those things are good things that you can derive from it. So unless you attach to it as me and mine and my wonderful experience, then I don't think it's a hindrance.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thanajan. Does anyone have a next question? You can raise your hand on Zoom, or you can type your question in the chat group below, at the taskbar below. Okay, Ajahn, we have some questions that came in from via the chat. So question 1, Dear Ajahn, what's the Buddhist wisdom behind the word yatabutanyana dasana?
Okay, so we can go back to the grid view. Okay, so yatabutanyana dasana, just to split the word up into its components. Yatabhuta is seeing in accordance with reality. Bhuta is like reality or truth, or the way things are. Sometimes they're translated. And yanadasana means seeing. So seeing in accordance with the way things are, or seeing in accordance with reality, which is an insight knowledge that can, if it goes deep enough, change our status from being a worldling to being that of an Arya Pugala. So changing our mental status from being a Putuchana, a worldling, to being an Arya Pugala. However, if it doesn't go deep enough, at the very least, what it does, it shows you or it gives you some insight into the true nature of things. Now, it's never really being said where, into what exactly this insight is, or let's put it another way. There are different ways in which you can have knowledge into the way things really are. But in most cases, in the way the Buddha talks, it would be insight into the Four Noble Truths. So yatabutanyana dasana, seeing things the way they truly are, means what you see is that this is dukkha, this is the origin, the cause of dukkha, this is the end, the cessation of dukkha, and this is the path leading to the cessation of dukkha. So it's an insight into the Four Noble Truths. However, that insight into the Four Noble Truths can be derived through penetrating different aspects of our experience. It can be through penetrating the true nature of the body. It can be through penetrating, say, the nature of feeling, the nature of mind, the nature of Dhamma. It could be an insight into the six sense bases: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mind. So all these things that make up our experience, which we usually take to be as me, mine, or self, once it is revealed to us through insight that these things are impermanent, because of that impermanence, in the end, suffering, dukkha, and not to be regarded as me, mine, or self. So that's basically what yatabutanyana dasana means. And sometimes it's an insight that makes you very happy, gives you deep, profound understanding of the truth, but it might not necessarily turn you into an Arya Pugala. But at the very least, it gives you an insight, and based on that, it should make your meditation or your practice go more smoothly after that. So that's, if you want to come back on that, it's fine. But that's just in short what that really means.
Thank you, Thanajan. Do we have a next question? Right. Yeah. Okay, question number 2. Dear Ajahn, what is a good death from a Buddhist practitioner perspective?
A good death. Well, the question implies that you already know that death in and of itself is not a problem. It's just part of nature. What we take to be our self is largely made up of the body and the 5 senses. And so that body and the 5 senses, they have an expiry date, if you like. They don't last forever. So what death really is just, the falling away or from this particular realm due to the fact that the body can no longer sustain the mind because it's running out. A good death, however, is one where at the time of dying, you retain mindfulness and wisdom. You retain peace and calm, because what they say in conventional Buddhist literature, and the Buddha really didn't get into too much detail about it, but it's sort of assumed that the last moment of consciousness is very important for your immediate rebirth, which doesn't mean that all your good and bad karma from the past is wiped out, But it means that the state of mind that you pass away with from this existence has a very significant bearing on where you reappear in the immediate afterlife. So if you die with a confused state of mind, you die with an angry state of mind, you die with sadness, you die with whatever unwholesome, unskillful mind states, then that might well give rise to a corresponding rebirth, and that is not a good thing. That would be a bad death. So a good death is if you die with a sense of non-remorse, because you know you've kept your precepts pure. If you die with a sense of peace and ease and calm, if you die with mindfulness and clearly knowing what is going on, you remember the Dhamma of the Buddha. In other words, you maintain your sense of wisdom. So that those would be, good qualities, wholesome qualities. However, death is always unpleasant to the unenlightened being, because if we have not really penetrated the Four Noble Truths, then the attachment to life, the attachment to the body, the attachment to our families, loved ones, relations, all that is still there. So the most important thing is that you remember and rely upon your goodness, and which brings me back to the heart. If the heart is good at the end of a life, if your heart is pure, is peaceful, is calm, then that's a good death. And then there's nothing to worry about. But dying is not the problem. We all die. I mean, but you can see the fear of death is a very wonderful tool to manipulate people. So yeah, that's what I would call a good death. Dying with a good heart, dying with a good mind.
Okay. Thank you, Ajahn. So we do have a next question on Zoom. Dear Ajahn, what is one way we can do to reduce divisiveness in our community?
Excuse me. It's very difficult. And I tell you this honestly because I am experiencing it with my own parents. I experience it with a very dear friend of mine. The problem is that, let's bring it back to Dhamma, because all of you will remember this vicious cycle of views, perceptions, and thoughts. Especially those of you who've listened to Ajahn Brahm long enough would have heard that at least a few times. And it's also one of the topics that I like to talk about. Once we have a particular view, then we will perceive the world in accordance with that view. And the way we perceive the world, we will think about the world. And these thoughts, in turn, will justify, support, and prop up our views. So you have the views giving rise to the way we perceive the world. Our perceptions condition our thoughts condition our view, reaffirm our view, views, perceptions, thoughts, views, perceptions, thoughts. So you're within that cycle, depending on the view of the world or any situation that you are currently holding. Now, with views, what they do is they support our sense of self. They give our lives meaning. And it can be something as trivial and worldly as being the fan of a particular football team. And then you go out and you fight with the football fans from the other team. It can be something as trivial as goodness knows what. So currently we have a division between people who believe one thing and people who believe another thing. The problem is none of them, or very few of them, really know what's true. But because the way they view the world is so important in maintaining their sense of their place in the world, their sense of self, their own place in this world. I am someone who believes this. So once your life is propped up by this view, anyone who comes in and wants to challenge that view is going to be perceived as an enemy. And dissolving other people's views is next to impossible. So we can't really attempt to change other people. And I make that very clear here in the monastery, where one of the monks is very old. He's in his mid-70s, not very old, sorry. He's in his mid-70s. And because Germany is currently leading in daily new admissions of this with this coronavirus, I think we're about 75,000 people a day contract. I mean, that's the numbers that you're getting in the mainstream media. Yeah, what that means, let it be whatever, but that's what you are hearing 24 hours a day, that there are 75,000 people contracting corona every day. And so this elderly monk in our monastery now decided that it's time for him to have the vaccination. And that's okay. Who am I to prevent anybody from doing what they feel is necessary? However, all the other 5 monks here in the monastery, we feel that we don't want that. And that's also okay. So when you talk to other people, just allow them to do or to be whatever they feel is necessary. And that way you're not being a threat to them. So that's one way of trying to maintain that kind of peace. However, we will encounter a lot of pressure. I'm under a lot of pressure from my parents. And it's just the way it is. I'm not trying to convince my parents, but I'm also hoping that they allow me to make my own decisions based on the information that I have. And like I said in the beginning, information is a very tricky thing these days, because if you see, say for instance, you're looking for something on the internet that is not in line with the current narrative, you find it's very difficult to find information, because those people who control the media, those people who control the internet, they have very clever algorithms with which they can make it very difficult for us to find the things that we're looking for. And so what we do get in most cases are things in line with the narrative that they prefer. And so that makes it very difficult, because a lot of us do not have the time We are not the geeks. We don't know how these things work. So we trust. We have faith in the system. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. But what it means is that people have a very difficult time to find different kinds of information, because that is then being put out as disinformation, misinformation, false information, fake news, what have you. And so all that is thrown into one pot. All that is already really dumb and stupid and silly, and we are the only ones who know. But you can't change that view. All you can do is, maintain your own peace and calm in the face of that, and allow people to make their own decisions. Don't become aggressive. I know it's difficult. I experience it in my own life, so I can really feel for you. And I'm really sorry that I don't have any better. I wish I had better advice for you, but I don't. Sometimes we have to wait. One of the things, the beautiful things that the Buddha once said, he said that the truth always has a way of coming to the surface sooner or later. So sometimes for us, all we can do is wait.
Sadhu. Thank you, Thanachan. So do we have a next question, right? On the chat. Oh no, just thank you. So, okay, another question online, Thanachan. Dear Ajahn, what makes you decide to ordain for life?
I assume the question is directed to me, to myself, why I decided to ordain for life. Well, first of all, I haven't decided to ordain for life, but I also haven't decided to ordain temporarily. So I just decided to ordain and see where it takes me. And so far, I haven't found anything better. So as you know, the Buddha never really wanted anyone to make a decision for life, because the Buddha was wise enough to realize that people can and will eventually perhaps change their mind. So once you're ordained, you can always at any time leave the monkhood, and there's no shame in that. Unfortunately, in some countries it is perceived as being shameful, but it's not. So certainly in Thailand, the tradition that I come from, you're not being looked down upon once you disrobe. Quite the opposite. The girls, when they find someone who's been a monk for a few years, they prefer them because they're usually fairly good people once they've been a monk for a while. So it's a good catch to marry an ex-monk. But joking aside, I think it's a choice that you make, and you try and live up to that choice as best you can, and you do it on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, if you develop along the Eightfold Path, if you develop your heart and your mind, you see yourself changing for the better. You see a beautiful state arising. You find your life is becoming something beautiful. And so even though I can't say with absolute certainty that I will be a monk for the rest of my life, I can tell you with absolute certainty that currently, in this present moment, I have no desire to disrobe. So, yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for the question. So up next, we have Brother Channy.
Yeah, thank you again, Bhante. I have another question on meditation, if you don't mind. Now we know that the Buddha in the Sutta. I'm not sure about. I was told that in the Sutta, Buddha got enlightened through just Anapanasati. Okay, so my thought is that since he's enlightened through Anapanasati, shouldn't we spend more time on this form of meditation and don't have to spend too much time on the other form of meditation, like Brahma Vihara meditation, body pass meditation, blah blah blah. So is that the right approach? Since he got enlightened through Anapanasati, we should follow him and spend more time on it.
Well, first of all, if you carefully look at the Anapanasati Sutta, which I really would recommend you to do, and perhaps read a book on Anapanasati where the different stages are described. Say, if you have a monk that you trust who wrote a book on Anapanasati, describing it in more detail, because sometimes when we look at a sutta, if we're not very experienced, we find it hard to fathom the complexity or the implications within that sutta. So, because the reason I say this is because the Anapanasati Sutta is one of the most complex and all-encompassing suttas in the canon. It does encompass body contemplation, it does encompass contemplation of feeling, it encompasses the contemplation of the mind, and it encompasses the contemplation of Dhamma. If you look at the Anapanasati Sutta of the different stages, where, say for instance, let's not take it too far, but just to give you an example, at the end of the first tetrad, the Buddha says, I call this the contemplation of the body. Why do I call this the contemplation of the body? Because the breath is a body within bodies. But even hearing that, for someone who is not familiar with the suttas, we'll find it not so easy to understand. But say the breath, what is the breath? If you breathe in and you don't breathe out, you're dead. If you breathe out and you don't breathe in, you're dead. The breath is one of the four elements: earth, air, water, and fire. Your body is composed of those four elements. If one of these elements, namely the breath, disappears, all the others can't stand. So the breath is representative, in a sense, for the four great elements. It's representative for the body. And as such, you're already practicing the first Satipatthana by the time you get to the end of the first tetrad of the Anapanasati Sutta. Then it goes into feeling, it goes into mind, it goes into Dhamma. So it's a very complex and very all-encompassing, a very beautiful sutta. And if we understand it deeply, we see that there are a lot of aspects in it which on the surface we might miss if we think that it's just about the breath, breathing in, breathing out. It goes all the way. It goes all the way. Anapanasati, as you rightly said, is perfectly capable of taking you all the way to full enlightenment. But it is not just a mere samatha object. It is capable of giving you deep insight into the nature of the body, the nature of the mind, and the nature of Dhamma. So yes, practicing Anapanasati Sutta, go for it all the way. I can only encourage it. But remember that all the other aspects are already in there. That's why it was the Buddha's. It wasn't the first teaching of the Buddha. The first teaching the Buddha gave was the contemplation of the body. But then he realized that a lot of a lot of monks would benefit from developing Anapanasati. And so the next meditation teaching he gave was on that.
Okay, thank you, Thanajan. So we've got another question coming in from the Zoom chat. Dear Thanajan, wish you well. Question related to meditation. Is Nimita, does Nimita comes in different forms? Did Buddha mention specifically Nimita has to be in a light format? There seems to be different sources of interpretation. Nimita can be in the form of light, or in the area where the breath is most sensitive to oneself, or at the subtler stage. Please kindly advise. Best wishes from Eric in Singapore.
Okay, Nimitas, just to translate the word for those of you who are not so familiar with it. Most of you will have heard the word Nimita. You could translate it something like sign. And in fact, in some of the suttas, the Buddha talks about the sign of the mind. So the sign of the mind is something that appears once the mind becomes peaceful and free from the hindrances. So it can appear earlier, but like a useful, solid sign of the mind will come up once the mind is free from the hindrances. However, that sign of the mind, as you already implied in your question, doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of a light. And the Buddha never talked like that. The Buddha never specified what form that nimitta might take on. Now, what we must understand is that there are different forms of nimitta, and in that context, they can also be translated as visions. Now, for a lot of people who have a visual mind, even if the hindrances are not fully suppressed, that people can have different visions, different phenomena appearing. We heard earlier from one of the meditators in the group that he was perceiving the edges of the body fading out and becoming one with the surroundings. Yeah. So that would also be a case of a nimitta. Some people may feel light, some people may feel heavy, some people may feel hot, some people may feel cold. Those are physical phenomena. But on the mental side, the kinds of visions and experiences of perception, the way we perceive the breath, the way we perceive the mind, the way we perceive the body, all those can be called nimittas. But also nimittas can be external nimittas. It could be visions of different places. It could be visions of things in the past or the future. So that range of nimitta is very, very vast. Now, in terms of samatha, in terms of meditation, in terms of taking the mind to peace, the nimitta that is significant is what the Buddha called the sign of the mind, that which gives you a way of perceiving your own mind. One of the Kubachan in the forest tradition once said, the mind, seeing the mind is the path. Now, the mind, seeing the mind is something when the mind turns back on itself and begins to perceive itself, that which knows, because the heart is knowing, the mind is knowing. Heart and mind are synonymous. And the basic function of that heart, that mind, is simply to know. but the mind goes out of itself and it knows things outside of itself. But once the mind, through meditation, turns back on itself and begins to perceive itself, that's called the mind knowing the mind, or the mind seeing the mind. And that happens when the mind enters samadhi. So the Eightfold Path, as it were, culminates in what the Buddha called Samma Samadhi, which is usually defined as the one of these four deep states of meditation we call the jhanas. So in those states, the mind is actually one with itself. It perceives itself. It knows itself. There's only just the knowing in the present moment, knowing about itself. And on the way to get there, there will be signs of that mind. And those signs can manifest to different people in different ways. And you have to be a very skilled meditator to be able to teach people about these things. Personally, perhaps I'm not such a skilled meditator because, well, I don't know about skilled meditator, but I don't have visual signs. And a lot of my friends don't. So for a lot of us who have not got a particularly visual mind, those signs of the mind appear in different ways. It could be the piti sukha, the happiness, the joy. It could be a sense of emptiness. It could be a feeling of buoyancy, lightness. It could be different things. But remember that what we are after is not the nimitta. The nimitta is just, it's like Lupa Plian, one of my teachers in Thailand, he once said it very beautifully. He said, people get attached to these nimittas. It's like you're standing at the crossroads in front of a traffic light, and you keep looking at the traffic light. And yes, even though the traffic light is the sign for you to cross the road, to cross the intersection, if you get stuck on that light, you never cross the intersection. So remember that what we're after is the mind, is the knowing, is the quality of knowing in the heart. So once the mind turns back on itself and it begins to know itself, whichever way that may appear to you, and then that's called the sign of the mind. It could be that joy and happiness. It could be that sense of emptiness. It could be different things. If it is a light, that's fine. If it is a color, it's fine. Whatever it is. But remember, it's just the sign of the mind. It's not yet the mind. So the mind, knowing the mind, that's where we want to go. We want we want the mind to turn back on itself, and for the mind to experience itself without external interference. Okay, so much, so good.
Thank you, Thanajan. So the next question, please, Ryan. Okay, next question. Dear Ajahn, for people who are paralyzed and totally dependent on family members to take care of, and if one chooses to stop taking food so that one can leave the world quicker so as not to give hardship to the other having to take care of a paralyzed person, is such imposed action breaking the precepts of taking one's life?
I don't think so. It's a tricky one, and I'm not even supposed to talk about these things much because, as you know, if I say something and somebody else takes that up and kills themselves on my recommendation, then I'm no longer a monk. So I'm not giving any advice here. I'm merely stating my opinion on that. Because there is such a thing as inaction. And it's always been one of these hypothetical discussions that people like to have when they don't have anything better, where, the so-called what if question. Not acting, not doing anything is then sometimes perceived as an action. But can it? If I don't help someone, am I committing bad karma? So they're hypothetical questions, because we're getting into very intimate, very personal, very specific situations here, where each of us has to make that decision for themselves. And we can't assume that we know what we're going to do in a situation like that. So not doing anything, in other words, stopping to eat, I would not see that as breaking the precepts. It's like a choice that you make, and in fact, even monks, have done that toward the end of their life, where they said, the khandhas are done for, and it's no sense of prolonging this. So they stop taking food and water altogether. And I've never heard that being perceived as committing suicide. It's just you come to a point where you realize it's okay to just not eat anymore. But again, it's a dangerous area, because people are very sensitive around that. And so the whole question of whether people are, and this is not talking about this situation, but there is obviously the situation where people choose to go to places. I know in Switzerland there's one place at least, other places as well, where they are assisted in dying. And it's very controversial. In most countries it's still illegal. Some countries it's legal. But deciding to stop eating, I personally think it doesn't fall into that category even. It's a personal choice. And I don't think it qualifies as suicide.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Ajahn. So, anyone has any questions? If not, maybe Ryan can share the screen on the next question. Do we have? Okay, next question. Dear Ajahn, how do we deal with our parents who seem to be controlling our lives?
Yeah, I feel a bit like that at the moment, even though I'm 55 years old. My parents are trying to convince me. It's tricky, because we have a lot of love and a lot of respect and a lot of gratitude to our parents, and also in their favor, one must say, they usually feel that they want the best for us. But again, they are also prone to that cycle of views, perceptions, and thoughts. So what they think might be good for us, we might not necessarily perceive as good for ourselves. And so there's a conflict there. So, it always comes down. See, I'm a person who really enjoys a meaningful discussion. where people actually listen to each other and they're willing to put themselves in your shoes and they're willing to try and perceive things in the way that you perceive it, but then also for us to be able to perceive in the way that they perceive. So a meaningful discussion is a discussion where people are open, where people are disposed to each other in a friendly, loving, kind, well-meaning way, where they listen to each other, but also where the aim is to come to a solution rather than just stating I'm right and you're wrong, because that's the end of the discussion right there. If I assume that I'm right and everybody else is wrong, then there's no way for discussion. And once my views are so fixed that I cannot even try to perceive in the way that my partner in discussion perceives, then it's very difficult. So, I mean, in the end, you control your own life. In terms of Dhamma, no one can really control your life. You are the one who makes decisions. Nobody can create karma for yourself. So that's very important to remember. You can be influenced by other people, but in the end, the choices you make are your choices. And, hopefully that the choices that we make will not lead to, divisiveness, will not lead to, divisiveness. What else is there? So you're reminding each other, you, your parents, yourself, that you're a family, you're the same blood, you share a lot, you have a lot in common. So why not try and find a solution to whatever problem there is, But also we need to accept the decisions that other people make. We need to accept the decisions that our parents make, and hopefully our parents can accept the decisions that we make. But what we need is a friendly disposition. Again, it comes back to the heart. It's like if my heart is open, if I can allow other people's views and perceptions to come in, and then that's already a good basis. If I can't do that, if I'm very stuck on my views, my opinions, and the way I feel everything is right, then there's very little room for discussion. So try to soften those boundaries. Try to, bring it back to the heart. Bring it back to those qualities of goodwill, kindness, love, compassion. Also, sympathetic joy is a quality people disregard. Also, see the goodness in your parents, or your parents see the goodness in your children, and then rejoice in that. Wherever you can find goodness, rejoice in that. But in the end, equanimity is also a deciding factor, because there will be times when we can't change things. There will be times when whatever loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy we have, that people are, too stuck on their views. And then if we don't have the requisite equanimity, then it will cost us a lot of energy. It will cost us a lot of anguish and suffering. So sometimes we have to be able to let go into equanimity. but make the effort because it's worthwhile. I'm currently trying. I'm making the effort, trying to, have meaningful discussions with my parents. But it's not easy. Okay.
Thank you, Thanajan. So, next question, please. Next question. Dear Ajahn, the process of dying is painful, or is the last breath, or is it the last breath that is painful?
No, if it refers to what I said earlier, I think dying in general is unpleasant. It's always unpleasant because there are unpleasant feelings. If the breath is affected, like I was present with when people died, and I was in the room when Luang Por Plien let go, and passed away, and his breath was absolutely horrible. It was just gurgling, and quite a few times we thought that was the end of it, because it stopped, and then it came back again until it was finally the last breath. But it was very. The breath was very unpleasant, and there was hardly anything left of him in terms of the body. Eyes all gone yellow, very skinny. So the body dying is an unpleasant reality, and more so if we are still attached to it. And that's why it was so beautiful to be in a position of being in the room with someone who had already let go of the body. I mean, he wasn't attached to his body for a long time. So you had this clear presence of a beautiful, radiant, liberated mind, and this wretched body breathing its last. Glug, 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 glug. But the two were completely separate. And being able to perceive that, the beauty in the room, the brightness, the clarity, the sense of peace that was there from his radiant mind, in contrast to this decomposing body, it was wonderful, because it clearly showed you the true nature of the body, but at the same time it showed you the true nature of the mind, that the mind can be separate from the body. The mind is not the body is not the mind. The heart is something different altogether. And for someone who has realized that stage, then dying is not a problem. So it's not necessarily the last breath that is painful, but it's the process itself once we're attached to it. So again, it's the heart that is important. The breath is just the breath. It's just air. It's just part of nature. Still there? You have to unmute yourself, Wei Ming.
Okay, we managed to sort it out.
You managed to mute yourself, so bring it up again.
Okay. So the next question, Ajahn. Ajahn, in the Buddha's first discourse, there is a saying, whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. Does this actually mean anicca, or the knowledge of deathless otherwise?
It is the first true insight into the deathless. And I've recently, many of you know my verses of Luang Por Chah. It's about 20-minute reading, the ones I read in Kuala Lumpur. Verse translations of some of the life and teachings of Luang Por Chah. I've always wanted to do that for many years. I've recently finally managed to translate it all into German. And there's a place where Luang Por Chah says that having insight into what is impermanent or seeing the impermanence in all things gives you insight into that which is permanent. So yang kinchi samudaya dhammang sapantang nirodha dhammanti, that's the Pali. Whatever is of the nature to rise, all that is of the nature to cease. And in the first sutta that you mentioned, it is what Ajahn Cattamalo said and saw, which is that whatever is dependently arisen, whatever is conditioned, whatever is formed, yeah, whatever arises, because everything that arises because of causes, yeah, and all that which arises according to causes, that is also going to cease when these causes cease. And the only thing that is beyond cause and effect, the only thing that is beyond the conditioned realm, that the only thing that is beyond formations, outside of formations, is Nibbana. So seeing for the first time, I mean, this is a classical case of, remember the question earlier about yatabutanyana dasana, seeing things in accordance with the way things are. This is what you see in accordance with the way things are, namely that whatever is of the nature to arise is of the nature to cease. So that is the very insight that can make the difference between you being a worldling and an Arya Pugala, which it was in the case of Anya Kondanya in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So the true seeing of the fact that whatever arises passes away also gives you insight into what is permanent and true, which is Nibbana. So that insight is also your first insight into Nibbana, but it is not the full attainment of Nibbana.
Thank you, Thanajan.
Okay.
So do we have another question? Right? Okay, we have the next one. Hi, Thanajan. Did the Buddha give advice on finding purpose at work?
Well, work is what gives us a livelihood, isn't it? I mean, we all have to make a living. If you're a monk, your livelihood is to go on alms round. I mean, that's your livelihood. So what the Buddha said about work, one is it needs to be a skillful livelihood. It needs to be right livelihood, which is part of the Eightfold Path. So providing your livelihood is a wholesome, right livelihood, then what we need to do is to see it as the means to facilitate our practice of the Dhamma. I've seen over the years a lot of people who saw a conflict between their work and their practice of Dhamma. And that's, of course, a problem, because, I mean, if there really is a conflict, then you should give it up. But if it's a wholesome, if it's a skillful, if it's a right livelihood, and it facilitates your life, which also means your practice of the Dhamma, then trying to reconcile those two is the best way of finding purpose or meaning in your livelihood, in your work. So the work is a necessity to maintain your life. maintain your family, to maintain whatever it is that you need to survive in this world. And as such, it shouldn't be in conflict to your practice of the Dhamma. If you can change your perception in that way, then you will find that your work becomes more, well, it has more purpose, and also it's more, you're more at ease with it. If you see, I don't want to work, I want to meditate, I don't want to go to work, I want to sit meditation, that's useless. It doesn't do you any good, because if you don't want to work for a living, in a conventional sense, then you have to take it all away and become a Buddhist monk or Buddhist nun. But even then, you don't get out of your livelihood, which is going on alms round, which was one of the most frustrating things in this Corona period, where there was a time when we couldn't go on alms round, and I felt really sorry for all those kind people who've been supporting us on alms round over the years, that we couldn't come out, we couldn't go out. It was the most traumatic in the whole of those last 2 years. Other than that, I'm okay. I'm on permanent retreat if you want. I don't have to go out. But I face the problems of not my parents not wanting me there, and they're not coming here. And those are where the problems are. If you come, we can't go anywhere with you. It's all 2G. Can't go into a restaurant with you. So yeah, make sure that you get your priorities straight. Yes, the meditation, the Dhamma practice is important, but so is your livelihood, because that's what affords you your meditation practice. So try not to see a conflict. And the purpose of your work, yes, it can be within the work, but that's, again, is a worldly purpose. But the main purpose is that it gives you the opportunity to practice. And if it's a job that you like, and that has wonderful other benefits and purposes and meaning, well, then all the better. But make sure that they're in harmony. Maintain the harmony. That's the most important thing.
Thank you, Thanajan. So I think we've mostly completed all the questions that's been posted to us. Does anybody? Oh, we have one more question. Sorry, that just came in. Okay, just a minute. Okay, the next question. Dear Ajahn, is there a maximum age limit to be ordained as a monk?
Not according to the Buddha. I remember even when the Buddha was close to his own parinibbana, he still allowed an elderly person to come and be ordained. So in terms of the Vinaya, in terms of the monk's discipline, there is no age limit. However, I personally know that the different monasteries around the world, through their experiences over the years with people who ordained later in life, they have set an age limit. But that is something, it's a prerogative of each monastery to say, well, look, the cutoff line here is 50, or the cutoff line is 60 or whatever, but it's not according to the Buddha. It's a personal decision, and you can see it just to make you understand. Once we've lived in the world for a long time, again, our views and perceptions, they're more set. As they say in the world, they're set in their ways. So you're more set in your ways by the time you're in your 50s or even 60s or older, in particular once you've raised a family perhaps or something like that. So then to throw all that out and basically start afresh, it's very difficult for many people. It's like Luang Por Chah, he gave this beautiful example. He said, if you have a cup that's full of dirty water, it doesn't matter. You can try and purify it. You can try but you can't put anything into that cup because it's useless, because it's already full of dirty water. So basically, you have to chuck that dirty water out, give the cup a good rinse, and then you can fill it up with clean and clear and fresh water. So for us to let go of our preconceived notions, views, opinions, perceptions, in favor of the perceptions of the Dhamma, in favor of the training of the Dhamma Vinaya as a Buddhist monk, is not easy. And for some people, it proves very difficult. So that then makes those people very difficult to train. If you have someone who is hard and stubborn and he doesn't want to do what you say and he always does his own thing and he wants to do his own thing and he's got his own ideas and he knows everything better. And we know these kind of people in the world, and they're just impossible to train. And so over the years, different monasteries have had different experiences with people like that. And so they made their own decision of setting an age limit. But that's nothing that comes from the Buddha.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. We are almost at the top of the hour with 10 minutes remaining. So maybe before we close the Q&A, are there any more last minute questions that anybody has? You can just raise your hand and then we can give you the rights to unmute yourself. Anybody? Going once? Going twice? This is your last chance. Yep, any more, Ryan, coming in? Oh, anybody? Okay, so that was probably our last question for today, Ajahn. So, Ajahn, we have about another 8 to 9 minutes left. I was wanted to thank Babs for co-organizing this Q&A session together with us. So I thought maybe it might be good to invite Brother Baksun or Brother Danny, in case they want to say a few words. Brother Danny or Brother Baksun.
Hello, Ajahn. Good morning, Ajahn.
Hello, Baksun. Nice to see you.
Brother Danny. He's the president now for Babs.
He's a new president of Babs.
Who?
Brother Danny.
Where's Danny? Oh, up there. Okay.
Yeah.
He's got his mask on. That's why I can't see him. She's one around?
Yes.
She's one around anywhere? I haven't seen her.
Okay, hold on. Hold on, Ajahn.
Fun. Ajahn looking for you. Fun. Ajahn looking for you.
The last time I was in Malaysia was actually even longer than I've been to Singapore. So, how long's it been back soon since I've been to Malaysia? Must be at least 3 years, 4 years, huh?
Yes. It's been a long time. And it has also been a long time since we visited Ajahn.
Yes. Anytime.
Hi, Ajahn. How are you?
Hello.
Hello, how are you? Good to
There
see
she
you.
is. Hello, nice to see you.
Yes. When you coming to visit Malaysia?
Well, let the waves smoothen
Okay.
first.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Okay. Good to see that. Thank you for the calendars, Ajahn.
Oh yeah, you got them. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Calendars arrive in Singapore, by the way.
Not yet, Ajahn. Probably soon, I guess. Haven't received it yet.
Okay. Well, I only sent a few anyway, so you can't make too many people happy with them. So anyway, Brother Danny, you wanted to say a few words?
Yeah.
Yes, Ajahn, thank you so much for sharing the Dhamma with us. The Q&A session has been very beneficial. Thank you so much, Ajahn. We hope Ajahn can visit us soon.
Yes,
Yeah.
I hope so too.
Yep.
I think the last time Ajahn visited us was during the Ajahn Chah's Remembrance Day. That was in 2018. Yeah, it was about 3 years ago. 2018, yes.
Yeah.
In a while.
Oh well.
We look forward to Ajahn visiting us again soon.
Yes, let's remain hopeful and positive.
And,
spread lots of loving kindness to the world so that this madness soon ends.
Yeah.
We all hope so too.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Brother Baksun, Sister Siusuan, and Brother Danny for concluding the session with us. So we have about 5 minutes left. We were thinking, there's a question that came in. Ajahn, do you think we can take one last question before we end?
Who's asking?
Yeah, sure. Ryan is preparing the slides. So just the last question before we end off for today. Right. Sorry for the last minute question. So how can we live in accordance as a practitioner now, coping with our current situation we are in? Lots of difficult choices to do.
Well, the question is probably deliberately vague. Might as well ask, what's the meaning of life? Well, I mean, I guess, again, for me, it's like how I started off this session. It's like look into your heart. Find your own answers in your own heart, because what do we have? Because what can we trust? Who can we trust? You look into your heart, and you find what's in your heart, and then you compare it to the Buddha, to the Dhamma. And if it's in line with the Dhamma, if it's in line with your precepts, and it's in line with your heart, then it's something that you should act upon. But if you look into your heart and you come up with something and it's not in accordance with the Dhamma, in other words, it's against the Dhamma. It's like it wants you to act out of greed, out of hatred, out of delusion, out of fear. Then make effort to not act upon that. I know it's difficult, because sometimes our decision making is not something that affords us a lot of mindfulness and wisdom. A lot of us have to make decisions on the fly. But if it's a decision that you can deliberate upon, that you can allow to just sit with your heart for a while, say even just like a trivial thing, if I have to write an important email and something that is potentially not changing something or influencing someone or whatever, then I always let that sit for a night. And then I read it again in the morning. And it's only when I'm really certain, and sometimes I even give it to other people, because I value the input of my friends in the holy life. So if it's a decision I'm not sure about, I'm not afraid, I'm not ashamed, I'm not shy to ask my friends and say, well, look, what do you think? So making decisions to the best of your ability in accordance with the Dhamma, but you have to always go through your own heart. You always have to go through your own mind, because that's where the intention originates, isn't it? And how does it feel? Sometimes how we feel is a good indicator. If it makes us hot, if it makes us aggravated, if it makes us shake, if it makes us, lose our control and get very emotional, then maybe just wait a while. It's difficult, but always remember that what we want is to make our own hearts good. I mean, that's what counts, because we can't make anybody else's hearts good. That's their job. And once there's evil people in the world, or stupid people, or greedy people, or angry people, or fearful people, they'll always be there. They always were there, and they always will be there. And I think Wei Ming was asking to end with some paritas.
Yes,
and so maybe what I do is I start with the Mangala Sutta, because the first line in the Mangala Sutta, asevanata palanam, and not to associate with fools, but to be associated with the wise. So choose your friends carefully, choose who you believe carefully, make good choices. But you have to make choices. I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes we can't procrastinate. We have to make a choice, and we have to have faith in that ability of making choices, because that's what we must do. We must choose. We must choose. But learn how to choose wisely.
Okay, thank you, Ajahn. So we've come to the end of today's session. Thank you for all the questions and answers, and thank you, Ajahn, for the insights. So to end off, we would like to invite Brother Baksun to request for the Parita chanting, and for Ajahn to give us a blessing for the end of the session. Yeah, Brother Baksun.
We shall now request for the Parita chanting from Ajahn. Please bow 3 times. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Vipati pati bahaya sabha sampati siddhiya sabha dukkha vinasaya paritang bruta manggalang. Vipati pati bahaya sabha sampati siddhiya sabha baya vinasaya paritang bruta manggalang. Vipati pati bahaya sabha sampati siddhiya sabha roga vinasaya paritang bruta manggalang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Asevana ca palanang panditanang ca sevana, puja ca pujaniyanang, etam mangalamuttamang, patirupa desavaso ca bhumbe ca kata punyata, atta samma panidicca, etam mangalamuttamang, mata pitu patanang, Uttadarasa sanggaho anakula ca kammanta, etam mangalamuttamang, Danan ca dhammacariya ca nyatakanan ca sanggaho, anavacani kammani, etam mangalamuttamang, arati virati papa, Macapana ca sanyamo, appamado ca dhammesu, etam mangalamuttamang, karavo ca nivato ca santuti ca katanyuta, kalena dhamma savanang, etam mangalamuttamang, kanti taso acasata samananan ca dasanang, kalena dhamma sakaca, etam mangalamuttamang, tapo ca brahmacariyan cariya sajjana dasana, nibbana saccikiriya ca, etam mangalamuttamang, Buddha saloka dhamme cittang, yasana kampati asokang virajang kemang, etam mangalamuttamang, etadisani kadvana sammatama paracita, sambhatta sutinga canti tante sangmang kalamuttamanti. Karanyamatta kusalena yantang santang padang apisameta sako, uju ca suju ca suwaco ca samudu anatimani, santu sako ca sumbaro ca pakicco, ca sala hukawuti santindriyo ca nipako, ca apakambo kulesu ananukindo, naca kundang sammacare kinciyena vinyo, ade upawadeyong sukino akemino hondu sambe sata, avandu sukitata, yeke cipana buta ditasawa, tawarawa nawasesa, dikawa ye mahantawa, Machimara saka nukatulla, detta ye cha dure, vasanti avidure, bhutawa sambhavesi vasambe sata, avandu sukitata, naparo parang nikumbeta nati manyeta katachina, kinchipyaro sana, patinga sanya nanya manya sadukami chaya mata yathani yang puttam aisa eka puttam anurakke evam pisama bhute sumana sambhavaye aparimana metan cha sambhalokasming mana sambhavaye aparimanang unnang ato chatiriyam cha sampadang averang asapadang tetan charang nisinno vasayano yavata savikataminno etang sating adetteya brahmametang viharang innama uditin chanupakam silawa nasanena sampanno kamesu vinayagena nahi chatu gammaseyam punareti ti bocanggo sati sangkato Dhammanang vicayo tata viriyam piti passa dipocanga catata pare samatupe kapocanga satete sambada sina munina sammadakata bhavita bahulikata Sangvatantiya pinyaya nimbanaya capodiya etena satcavacena sotite hotu sambada ekasming samayenato mokallanam cakassapangilane dukkite desva pocange sattade sahite catang Tapinande tvarokamuching sutankane etena satcavacena sotite hotu sambada ekada dhammaraja pikelanyena bipilito chunda terena tanye vapana petwana sadarang sammodetva ca ambada Dhammavuttasitanaso etena satcavacena sotite hotu sambada ahinnate ca ambada thinnanam pimahesinam bhanga hattakilesa vapattanupattidammatang etena satcavacena sotite hotu sambada Dukkhapada janin dukkha bhayapada janim bhaya sukhapada jani sukha hontu sape pipanino etawata ja amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sambe deva numodantu samba sampa disettiya dhanang dadantu sadaya silang rakantu sambada bhavana virata hontu kaccantu devata gata sambe bunda palapata pacekananca yang palang arahantananca tecena rakham mandami sambasu Samba Buddha nupavena samba dhamma nupavena samba sangha nupavena Buddha ratanang dhamma ratanang sangha ratanang thinnang ratananang anupavena catura siti sahasa dhamma Kandhanupavena pittakataya nupavena tinnasavaka nupavena sambete roga sambete maya sambete antaraya sambete upatawa sambete dunnimita Sambete avamangala vinasantu ayuvattako dhanavattako sirivattako yasavattako balavattako vannavattako sukavattako hotu sambada dukkharokapayave Soka satu cupatawa nekantaraya Jaya Vivina Santu Chateta Sa Jaya Siddhi Danang Lamang Sati Pagyang Sukhang Palang Siri Ayuja Vanno Japokang Bundi Jaya Sawa Satawa Saja Ayuja Jiwa Siddhi Bhavantu Te Mawatu Sama Mangalang Rakhantu Sama Devata Sama Buddha Nupavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te Mawatu Sama Mangalang Rakhantu Sama Devata Sama Dhamma Nupavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te Mawatu Sama Mangalang Rakhantu Sama Devata Sama Sanghanu Bhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, can we all pay respects to Thana Ajahn by bowing 3 times? First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Thank you very much, Thana Ajahn. It's really nice to see you again after such a long time. So, wishing you a good health and a good winter retreat.
Yes, thank you. All the best to you. My blessings and anumodana, and may you all stay healthy, especially in your hearts. And I'll see or talk to you sometime soon. So
Thank you.
keep up the good work. All the best. Sadhu,
Thank you.
sadhu.